Our cameraman's ready for whatever it's worth.
Picture's upside down.
Is it?
I'm by no means an expert on this, so I'm just going to throw out some things that I have done in the past in talking to different people on how they do crown moldings, and one of a couple of things that are out there on how different people do it or their way of doing it, but I guess there's just a multitude of ways to cut the crown molding, so you got to kind of work it out to what works for yourself. First thing you got to do is tune up your saw, make sure your blade's parallel and to the fence and vertical. Otherwise, whatever you're going to set it at is going to drive you nuts. You never will figure out your angles. Most of the time, whenever I've been doing it, is just on a small scale. I've never done a house or anything, which, of course, with this or anything else, you practice makes perfect, and you iron out what works for yourself. But most of the time, with my technique, which is far from scientific or anything, but I have always put the molding upside down, the bottom against the fence. You know, most of all your crowns or moldings, the edge that has the more detail is the bottom. I'm sure there's an exception to the rule or whatever, but most of the time the planar profile is at the top and the bottom has got more detail to it. With these, on the cove molding, I would imagine that your thicker, one leg is thicker than the other. So I would always put this at the bottom, because most of the time the cove is going to be like so. So you would see that thicker edge. But what I always worked out from talking to different people was I would set my saw at 45.
You want to turn it around this way?
Well, I was going to let these guys see it right now, but
Forget y'all.
I would hold it.
Forget y'all.
I don't know if you can see it or not, but doing it by hand, no jigs or anything, I would I'd be down here leaning and looking and making sure I got that wall edge against the fence, and then bring it out and make sure the bottom is up against the bed, which works fine depending on what size piece you're doing. Another technique that is on like the DeWalt has charts for it. Everybody's got charts for it, but to do it flat, and this is one of the charts, which seems pretty intimidating, but what you have to have for this or for the jig that we borrowed from Tom to show is, whenever we were making moldings, we called it projection, which is the amount of space, upside down, between the back edge here and the wall. So you might have, they're not 45 degrees all the time. They could be 38, 52, 60, 40, 45, 55. It all depends on what the architect that probably gets fired for the job's over, what kind of look he wants. And then if you're building it up, doing a build-up crown molding, you might want 45s, and then that last piece had more of a projection. So with this tool, or with this jig, it came with the angle finder, in instructions, but they call it the spring, which I'd never heard of that, but, and then the more that I looked on the internet, the more people were calling it spring. But that's the distance. If that's, you know, I keep wanting to hold it upside down. If this is the wall, and your ceiling there, the spring is this distance between the wall to that edge on the inside. Which, when you're doing it flat, you have to find your spring. The wrong round, the wrong way. It gives you a reading of spring of 39. And most of these, all of these were the same. The code molding was 33, so there's not too much difference to it. But you would you'd use your chart. It tells you what to set your angle of the bed, and then your fence, the bevel. It'd tell you what to do there. But these are also you can buy separate. But it's good it has a wall designation on it, because not all walls are 90 degrees. So if you take you assume that a corner is 90 degrees, and you cut your bevel at 45, that would be a perfect world. But if it's 88 degrees, you're going to end up with a gap either at the top or the bottom. So this is good to find. That one's 90 degrees. Tom must have made that one.
No, Harry.
Harry made it.
Yeah.
So you could set your saw at 45 degrees as far as the angle. And then you can do it like I had with doing it by hand. But if you're going to be doing a lot of rooms, or I don't know, if you want to be more precise with this Craig jig, you find out what the spring is, and then on the back side it has a adjustment, and you set it to whatever the spring is. And I didn't ask, and maybe some of you guys know, why would the spring make a difference? To me, I couldn't find the answer to it.
Well, the spring angle makes a difference because that's the angle that the crown molding is, how vertical it is compared to the wall. And if you want it to be 45, it has one appearance. And if you take regular crown molding and you can put it up with a steeper or a shallower spring angle, and it makes it look taller or it looks shallower. And that depends on how tall the ceiling is,
What look you
what
want
you
to
want it to look at. And you don't want a real flat spring angle on a 11-foot ceiling, because then it makes it look like it's flat against the ceiling as opposed to being against the wall. And sometimes you run into, well, it depends on a wider crown molding apparently looks better to most people if it's standing more vertical. So you'd have a shallower spring angle.
So with this, you can set your spring angle, and that will take care of your bevel. And then you just set your saw at a 45 for the for the angle, and you still put the crown molding in upside down. But and just hold it on your, so that would be an inside corner. If you're back here and wanting to come out. Normally, I've been around construction sites where they're building, trimming out in the room. They got the saw in a cart, and they can take the saw room to room to room. But if it's like at my house, trim's up there, and that 30 foot away is the saw. So what I've done, again, all I can do is say I'm not a professional at this. So all I do is I have a piece of trim. I want to go across this section so I don't forget my old age. By the time I get down to the saw, I rough in the angle. And then you can do inside corner or whatever and find out if you had your gauge with you, you could write on here it's 88 degrees, and then when you get down to the saw, you can imagine what you're doing. In a perfect world, you'd be able to have that saw right there, and you can look and get things lined up right where you want to. But you can also, to help, is make some setup pieces or reference pieces. This is the outside corner right side, outside corner left side, and then work out a system where you carry this up with you and you take that piece back down, or you can set your saw up with it. I had seen these before. This would be a whole lot easier to hold, especially if you're cutting an 8 foot piece or something. It'd be a whole lot easier to set it up and make a extension. You could set out here. Really don't have much else other than the key on the corners, inside corners, outside corners, is finding your angles so that you can set it up right. If you assume it's a 90 degree and you cut it at 45, you're chasing gaps all the time.
Do you ever cope any of your mold?
I've seen people do that. Mike and I were talking about this morning, but I saw a guy back in the 70s, he coped all of his moldings, and which is pretty easy to do on the inside corner, because you have this line to cope this out of the way. But what we couldn't figure out was how would you cope outside corner.
You don't.
You don't. It just.
You cut it to 45.
You just gotta make sure your angle's right.
Is that the inside is coped, so you could write a straight piece and then you cope up against it so that you don't have any caulk joint in there, so that will disappear with the on stained molding, so it disappears, so you don't see the expansion and contraction. It doesn't look like you did something.
So it's more than, I always figured they put up a square piece, square on both ends for time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not for just basic production, it's more for looks too.
Well, it was for appearance, but production is, if you're used to coping, and you got your tool set up, you can cope just as fast as somebody can miter it. It doesn't matter, like, because if you're a little bit long, you can trim it off with a file or something like that, or rasp.
There was a few tips if you had a outside corner come together to take the shank of a screwdriver and bend those fibers over to close it up. Bruce is nodding his head.
Do that with miter corners too.
And it's much easier. Like I say, you know, I'm no professional, so it's been trial and error for years, but off and on. But prime it at least before you put it up. If not, prime it and paint it one coat, and just put the finish coat on it after you put it up and putty the nail holes.
And prime the back.
Prime the back for
And
movement.
the cut ends. So you reduce the amount of moisture goes in it, otherwise, and you see it in trim work all the time where you go into a house and in the springtime it opens up and in the fall it closes back up and it's open on the bottom.
You get a dark shadow in there, but if you got it all painted, all the edges, then it doesn't throw such a shadow.
And nowadays they have this caulk called Big Stretch.
I've used a lot of that.
Have you used it? It's, you caulk in it in the joint and it'll expand by about 1/4 inch in a
Really?
tight joint.
Oh, really?
Seen that one.
Where can you get that?
Does it work on
Well,
both?
you used to carry it Bald Lumber, but they closed, and I think Sneed's is carrying it, but it's about $6 a tube, but it's water wash up, and it'll expand, it'll stretch 500%. So if you got an 1/8 inch gap, it'll expand to 5/8 of an inch before it separates. It's real stretchy, real rubbery. It works wonders for sloppy carpentry work.
The
I need it a lot.
back up to the cutting your crown flat. I didn't research it a lot other than the charts and stuff, but what appeared to me to be a good idea, and maybe why people do that, is that you can, once you've got your angle and your bevel set, you can cut it, flip the piece around and cut the other end, and you don't move the saw. That is, if both angles are the same. So it would, that may be why it's some people like it better or use it more as production wise. They can knock it out faster. You don't have to fiddle with each setting, keep going back and forth, left and right.
I assumed that you had to do the coping, and I drove myself crazy trying to cope. But you don't really need to do
You
that.
don't really need to if you got your bevel and your angles right. It'll be out of the way. The only trouble I've had with painting and not coping is the fact that I'm putting the paint on too heavy. I gotta knock off the runs around the edge so it's flat. So but yeah, you wouldn't have to cope it. It's I have not done.
It's nice to know that now that I'll never do it again, but
That's what I told my wife this morning.
You're never gonna do it again?
I hope not. I'm in another house, but I put it up in every room in my old house, slowly.
I made the bed and headboard for my daughter for wedding presents.
Oh, man, you can do the bathroom.
She got married 2 weeks ago, and just did a little bit of trim around the top. So it wasn't that difficult, especially since you can you're controlling the top board and the side. You make sure it's all straight. It's a whole lot better than sheetrock to work with. It's a whole lot easier. But when you nail, you don't want to nail in the air. You want to be able to put your nails. Is a preferred method. I always try to nail where I can get my finger in there to put the putty on there. Don't try to put it in the, on something like this, don't try to put it in the groove and hide it. It's too hard for me to putty it up. But that might just be something that something weird that I do. And then Tom had talked about putting, if you need some help getting the angle right when you put it on the wall, make up a block, which would be especially helpful if you're doing a 12-foot piece. Put you some blocks up and then make a jamb to hold it in place while you're working on one end or the other if you're by yourself. So it's probably be a lot more interesting if we had a professional doing this, but that's the basics, that's what I've worked out. But I'll probably get a jig like that to use once every 5 years.
So all of y'all have probably done crown molding. Probably all of y'all have done crown molding. So is it better to cope or better to do it this way?
Jig is the best way to go.
Actually, that little plastic jig, I had a customer bought a set of custom-made cabinets, and they did a laser or whatever and measured it all out. And the guys come in and hung the cabinets, and they left the crown molding on the cabinets laying on the floor. And I said, "You're not going to do that?" And he said, "We don't do crown molding." That is not part of the cabinet
Were they
installation.
Mennonites?
So he said, "You're going to have to do that." And I said, "Well, you know, this is stained a peculiar color and finish, white oak, and it had 6 inches of excess to go in a kitchen and dining room that matched." And I asked them why they expected me to just get by off putting the molding up on there, cutting it off, and I only got measured out 6 inches more. It says, "Well, why don't you get you one of them little blue jigs?" So I did.
Where'd you get the little blue jigs?
Huh?
Where'd you get the little blue jig?
If I'm not mistaken, I think that came from Home Depot. Home Depot on the wall with the big box.
Get them online.
Right. Yeah.
Craig, the Rockler probably had it.
If you want it, leave it in the box, we'll put it on the shelf, you don't come get it. Got instructions with it, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it works really good. It just, read the instructions and follow directions, and it just,
Mad Dog makes one that's a little cheaper than that one. Mad Dog.
Mad Dog.
And it's adjustable, and it's got a picture on there, so it tells you whether you're right, left, upstairs or downstairs. The only thing you gotta do is be sure to keep it out of the way of the saw blade.
Are you telling us something here?
He learned that the hard way.
The key, my key for doing any kind of trim work is I usually clamp a bracket on the back so my piece can't move around.
Yeah.
And that way, if
Yeah.
you've got the wrong angle, it'll all be the wrong angle, which means it'll all match.
So it's the jigs.
Yeah, but
Taken
that's only this long. I usually clamp a
All the way across.
fence all the way across the back side, so it doesn't matter where I am.
the crown molding, when you're doing it in somebody else's house, is kind of tricky, because the corner, like Don said, the corners aren't square,
Yeah.
inside or out.
Solid
And they aren't
outside.
square with the ceiling either. So you're changing that spring angle, you can go ahead and cut it the right angle at the corner, and then go to put it up and find it doesn't fit well, because the spring angle changed on the ceiling between the single and the wall, and you're doing an adjustment off of it, and then you go back and recut the piece, and it didn't turn out good, so you cut the piece, and that didn't turn out good either. And you're fucking around with it in order to get it to look right. Then you stand back and look, and nope, it's going up and downhill, so.
I've been redoing my kitchen, putting paneling up on the walls. It's got crown molding. And I found out real quick, I thought it just 45 degrees, well, that didn't work. So putting the paneling up, okay, it makes like a quarter inch, my trim's quarter inch too long. What I finally did, I started taking that quarter inch out of the middle and putting it back. It was a whole lot easier to try to get
Yeah,
that thing.
just put your scarf joint halfway down the wall.
And that worked a whole lot easier.
A lot of the areas I went to look at was make samples. Keep your scraps. In each corner you go to, you cut a scrap piece first, which,
Cut sample first for each quarter.
yeah.
I had some friends in Florida, 3 brothers, and they did construction on sites. All they did was custom mold, especially in those scale resident areas. Those boys are making really good money because they're in high demand. Not too many people do it for a living.
My
Yeah.
wife said that all the walls supposed to be straight. I said, honey, you ain't never been in, when they new houses, I said, don't wait no.
Yeah.
I said, the finished carpenter is well worth his money.
The last man out's got to deal with all what everybody else did.
That's right.
Boy, we did
I do
that.
mistakes.
And the,
Well, my house is 99 years old, trust me, there's not a square corner in that thing. Yeah. When they did
Well, see, I always had a theory about that. I thought that they didn't, a lot of the carpenters didn't own measuring tools, and didn't know how to use them anyhow. So in order to put a joist down, they put one down and nail it in, they stick their elbow down, and wherever that ended up being is where the next joist went. And this guy's got 16 inches from here to here, that guy's got 17. So it ended up being off, came off this one.
And like I did when I built my shop down at the lake, I used rough lumber, every bit of it is rough lumber, and it ain't straight anyway. And it, you got to work with it.
wow, gosh. I was gonna find you, thought I could find it real quick. I can't find it, wasting your time, but Eck Custom Homes, ECK Custom Homes. You go to his website and look at his moldings, that's what his forte is. He's doing 18-inch build-ups, and of course on the pictures, I'm sure he picked out his best work, but it just mind-boggling how you build something like that. It'd be interesting to see the stages he goes through.
Very quick if you do it for a living, but
That's what he did before he started building custom homes down at Hilton Head and the islands down there. He moved down there from Greenwood and did the trim work, and then came back here and started building custom homes. Any other questions, or?
You got it, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.